You did make some decisions. That's fine. Have some fun
Great.
downstairs.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the December 3rd meeting of the Goffstown Budget Committee. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Spencer, if you want to start us off with a roll call.
Spencer Dias.
Richard Manzo.
Peter Grigorokakis.
Bill Cordis.
Eileen McNinney.
Jeff O'Brien.
Cole Reel.
Kelly Boyer, Select Board Rep.
Jared Talbot, School Board.
Richard Flusher, Water President.
Carl Soderquist.
Okay. Off the top, would like to address the very unfortunate passing of Mike Smith, the chair of this committee. I think everyone here knew Mike to be a real great person. I think we're all very don't know really what to say. So I think we'd like to have a quick moment of silence here. That'd be great. Thank you. Derek, I would like to quickly touch on procedure going forward, given the situation.
So, I guess you would probably elect a new chair to serve out the rest of the this budget cycle, and then a vice chair. You'd also need to make a decision of whether you wanted to fill that vacancy. And what we could do is advertise it. It's a bit late in the game. However, the vacancy doesn't change your quorum requirement. So with that vacancy, it makes it hard to get a quorum. So we can advertise that for a period of time and put it out on social media that you're seeking appointments. They would be appointed until the next election cycle in January and February.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm not sure. I would be willing to continue serving as chair of this committee, and would be open to nominating Jeff as vice chair. If there's anyone else who would be looking to be nominated as chair, I think now would be the time to make that appropriate, or any other nominations would be in order.
By procedure, doesn't somebody have to nominate you for the
Correct.
chairmanship?
I nominate Cole Rail.
Second.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you. And I would like to appoint Jeff as vice chair of this committee. Okay, great, thank you. I know last time we did add a member, I think it was Jared, pretty late in the cycle, but we have struggled to meet quorum a couple times, so I would have no problem with us posting that position. I know that's late, but it's something this committee has seen before, and I think we can give them the information that they need to get going, or if it's someone who's served in the past who can maybe step on board, I think to get that position up and out there would be great. Great. Thank you. Okay, have public comment on the schedule. All right, seeing none. I have the minutes. Did we pass out the minutes of the 19th last time around?
Yeah.
I believe that's correct.
The ones we just got tonight.
Okay.
Have all the other ones.
I'll hold down the 21st for now, but would entertain a motion on the November 19th minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes, 17.
Second.
Motion from Jeff, second from Selectwoman Boyer. Comments, suggestions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Okay, moving on, we have presentations from the library and fire department tonight. So Diane, if you'd like to get started here.
Thank you. Amy Hunteman, Chair of the Library Board of Trustees, is joining me tonight.
Page 19.
Thank you.
So we already made our presentation, so I'm not sure what
Oh,
you would
sorry.
like from us.
So we're going to go line by line, kind of as we've gone. So we'll start on page 19. If anyone has any questions about any of the lines, I'll call on them, and then they'll ask a question. And then if any motions are in order, those will be made. Jared, do you have a question up top?
Question, yes, thank you. Looking at line 44, 800, travel expenses.
Yep.
Looking at your fiscal last year, you were over budget, and this year it looks like you're well over budget. My question is $2,000 going to be enough for whatever you have planned for next year?
It's never enough, but it will, I mean, we work within what we have, and if we overspend it, we make adjustments someplace else. It just depends on the conferences that are available to us, how many staff are interested. We've been engaged in paralibrarian training for four of our staff this year, so that's helped. We sent someone to a national conference that we didn't budget for, and that's part of what that overage is this year. Next year, that won't happen,
Okay.
so.
I should follow. Are you always, because I just don't know the size of your staff, are you always sending the same people to the same or
No.
different conferences?
No,
or-
we give opportunity to every one of our staff members, except our high schoolers, because of obvious conflicts with their time.
Thank
And we
you.
also have a day-long staff training day every February, and that's mandatory
Okay,
for our staff.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Diane, your labor lines that said here in the pass out
Yep.
that it went up $40,000, and I realized that 10,000 of it was the 53rd week. So are you getting more employees, or
No, we're
it's
not.
just a
We're-
cost of living and
It's-
the normal?
What we did for 2020 is we budgeted for a market adjustment to our compensation plan. So that is affected by that number too. The town did it in 2019. We're on track to do it for 2020 so that our matrix doesn't go out of date. And that is included in that number.
Diane, I've had to be away quite a bit this season, so I might have missed this. The electronic subscriptions,
Yes.
the year-to-date spending, is that just, we're just waiting to spend? Is there?
Many of
outstanding?
them are paid at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So that's why it's not spent totally yet.
So you do expect it to be close to that
I
16,000
expect it
mark?
to be very close, yeah. We did, we are going to be not renewing a couple of databases that aren't performing well with our public, so that might save us a little money. That's just normal, not paying for things that people don't want, basically.
Got it. Did-
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah, you can go.
since we are kind of, from what I understand, we're trying to do a few line by line. Do you
Yeah.
have an idea of the cost of those ones that you are going to cut out?
Those are small ones, they come to about $400.
Okay.
The ones that we aren't going to, but one of the things we haven't paid yet that takes a great bulk of that line is our Hoopla subscription. We only pay that in December. That's, depends on what we have in that line, that's content, so that's $6,000 to $8,000. So that's a big chunk
Okay.
of what we're gonna spend this month.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Great. Further questions on page 19? looking good. We'll move on to page 20. Nope. Nothing there.
One-page budget,
Great.
so.
Do you have anything in CIP?
No, we do not this year.
Okay. Is there any further questions for Diane?
I have just one on books and publication. Do you have a lot more to come for the month of December yet?
Not so much really, but we're overspent on a few of our other lines, especially our computer
Okay.
line. So I've been very conservative as far as making sure I can absorb that.
Okay.
Selectwoman Boyer, did you have?
Yeah, last time you guys were here, there were some questions about the feasibility study, and I just wanted to know if you wanted to give the committee an update on what's happening.
Do you want to do that?
Yep. So right now, we have signed a contract for phase 2, which will include all of the pictures and the public input and everything that will give us all the information we need to know on cost and size and everything that we're looking at and what we can do and what's affordable and things like that. We're still waiting back we sent the contract off, waiting to hear back. That's where we are now, but we're getting ready and we're really excited to head into that process.
Any further questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
All right. Chief,
Page 24.
24.
Good evening, Brian Allard, Fire Chief.
Great. So we'll start with page 24. Questions, raise your hand. We'll go over the line.
So page 11 is the fire budget. 24, I think, is EMS.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Derek was nice enough to whisper in my ear.
Great. Okay. We'll start on page 14. Or what page? 11. Great. Yep, Selectwoman Boyer.
Thank you. Chief, would you mind kind of explaining how the retirement system works for the fire department?
With regards to,
How much we're paying in? Just the fact that like next year is double with the state mandates that we pay.
So New Hampshire retirement is mandatory for teachers, police officers, and firefighters. And there is an employee share and an employer share. For a firefighter, they're Group 2, the employer share is considerably more because of the nature of firefighter and some of the risks that are involved with that job. So I don't know that I have the current rates, but the current rate is just over 30%. So for 30.09 in this budget. So for every dollar that goes to firefighters in wages, we have to pay into retirement 30 cents. So, and I think what you're seeing in the difference between the 2019 budget for retirement and this also reflects that through the FEMA grant, we have 4 new firefighters, but on the revenue side,
we have offsetting revenue.
we have offsetting revenue that we've increased. So.
Thank you.
Yep, Selectwoman Boyer.
Thank you. $44,150 clothing and uniforms. So
Yep,
we're buying new turnout gear currently.
correct.
This budget's staying about the same. What comes out of this specifically?
Yeah, so
versus-
these are actually duty uniforms
Okay,
and
thank you.
replacement shirts. We kind of have a quartermaster system, so if somebody damages a shirt, they get one in replacement.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep, Peter.
47,900. Is there anything specific coming up for repair this year that's different from other years normally, or is there just a shift?
Yeah, that was a great question. Next year, every 5 years, we have to have our SCBA cylinders hydrostatically tested. So next year's our 5th year, so that's why there's a bump coming up.
Is that about like $4,000 approximately, or?
It is. Yep, I'm just looking at my notes.
Yeah.
Spreadsheet here. It is approximately almost $4,000.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
47,120 operating supplies. I feel like I already asked you about this. The year-to-date is about $3,000, and I do see you decreased it for next year, but what's coming out of that?
Yep. What number again?
47,120.
Thank you. Yeah, so there is, so this year, as you know, I took over as chief in June, and to get my arms wrapped around the budget, kind of froze everything for a while. So there are a lot of tools coming out, upcoming here shortly, that are coming out of that line, such as saws, annual ground ladder testing comes out of that, fire extinguisher replacement.
So for year-to-date, is there anything that we can buy this year since we're?
That's what we're working on now, yeah,
Okay.
exactly what we're doing.
Just I know I only looked at it last night, but encumbrances, I didn't see anything for that specifically.
Yeah, I know, I put some of the encumbrances in, and I know I was in the finance director's office today.
Okay,
And
okay.
she was reminding me that I need to put some more in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. They're
Okay,
forthcoming.
great.
Yep, Spencer.
So for line, let's see, it's 47,950 turnouts.
Yes, sir.
Let's see, it's about 14,000 under.
Yep.
currently, So you know what that is.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. So that, as well as another line item that's in here, we actually moved funds to purchase more gear.
Okay.
So that is an encumbrance for this coming year. We had a gear committee put together. It takes several weeks now to get that gear. All the firefighters have been measured for that, so that's going to be spent.
Is that all right?
Yep, Peter.
Yes, sir.
And, yeah, it's Peter, by the way. Are there lines here, and I'll kind of shift to the second page as well, just in general, are there lines that you expect to overspend by a significant amount, by like 10% or more this year that you can think of?
Nope.
Are there any lines, given that you might have some encumbrances, are there any lines that you might expect to underspend by a significant amount?
If there's anything that is underspent, it's adjusted in 2020 already, but we kind of reduced that in the budget already.
Yep, Eileen.
Line 44,330, physical exams, is that increased because of the 4 new firemen?
So yes, and then in
And?
addition to, we send all of our
Right.
firefighters annually for physicals. So we want to track specifically heavy metals in their blood. So we make sure that we send them every year. They do quite an extensive workup on each of us, so. we
So
wanna make
have they
sure-
not been going every year, that's
That-
why there's an increase?
That is correct.
Okay.
They hadn't been, and this year they started, and next year they'll be coming again. So wonderful opportunity for them.
Jared.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Line 44300, employee development. Looking at your presentation, it looked like there was some collective bargaining educational requests that were put in place.
Correct.
But this is an increase of almost 300% for 2 years ago. What specifically are we looking at for training or educational development?
It's college education, so nobody had taken advantage of it. Myself and one other officer will be going in 2020. I'm finishing up in early 2020, and he's just starting.
Okay. And so this is for 4 credits for 2 individuals?
Yep.
Or 4 classes?
Yeah,
Or 5 classes?
I'm trying to think, when I figured his out, it was 1 class per semester. And then I think in January, I have 2 classes I'm finishing up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. My wife will be very happy.
Been working every weekend at school.
Yeah, yes.
Further questions on page 11 here? You good? Okay, we'll move on. Yep, Selectwoman Boyer.
Thank you. Chief, so just generally on this page, all of the year-to-dates were as of October 31st. So what we're looking at is obviously a month behind, and I know there's a lot of year-end encumbrances. Is there anything on this list that is gonna be, I know Peter kind of already asked this, but significantly underspent? I know we moved some money around this year, and
Yeah.
with
just
it
been-
not being your budget to start off, it's a bit difficult to tell.
So there's 2 on this page that maybe, and we're trying to get some, so if anybody does know, we have an issue with our radio system in town, and there's a couple line items on here that have not been spent yet, so those might be underspent, just because we can't get to that project right now with vendors coming in to do that work for us. So those would be the only 2 I'm gonna be double checking with Deputy Enos on. I'm just going through, double check if there's any other ones. The fleet maintenance may be underspent.
Okay.
Again, there's a pretty significant project on one of our engines.
And-
It's probably not gonna be done, and that was on the.
The
company's-
recalibration, yeah, okay.
And possibly some of the facility maintenance supplies on the side of the building behind you. There's a couple of door locks that we want to make the same passcode as the front. Speaking with the IT manager today, we don't think we can get a vendor in to do those by the end of the year. So again, that might be another encumbrance.
Great. Spencer?
So for fire prevention, 52,430, looks
Yes.
like historically it's been underspent. It has gone up for 2019, however, a little bit. Do you think it will go up to the department head or the other bulk?
So I do think it's gonna actually go up this coming, I think we've been, fire prevention is very, very important for us to get out in the schools. We wanna do more of that in the upcoming years, so, yeah, so we did bump that on purpose for this year.
Jared?
Line item 52435, alarm repairs and maintenance. It looks like you have a plan to replace your existing wire for $30,000 or $3,100. Is that going to be a one-time expense? So are we going to see this in a default budget the following year, or is it going to drop back down?
No, it'll continue to be replaced. So those are the fire lines around town. So a lot of those get damaged if we get big storms. If it was heavy storm, a lot of the times those lines come down and we don't even know what that number is going to be. So we're trying to be proactive for 2020 and replace some of those lines.
Yep, Jared?
Just following on the same line, so when I look at 2018, that $5,445 that was spent, that didn't include replacements?
It did not. That was just damage.
Okay.
Historically speaking, with Lieutenant Connor, who handles that for us, it's been a couple of years where we haven't replaced some of our lines, and that would be prudent to do that starting next year.
Gotcha, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Spencer?
So under emergency management, 44,300 employee development.
Yes.
It's never been spent. It does look like the department head did go down, but to 600.
Yep.
Do you think it will be spent?
This year? No.
Or for 2020?
For 2020, yes. So I'm the emergency management person now, and this year, as I've been a little busy being the new fire chief, so I didn't go out to any course, but next year I will be.
Okay.
Further questions on page 12?
I have one, sorry, we've already cleared this up. The SAFER grant, where does that get applied in your budget? Is that already applied with these numbers, or is this?
So you'll see the safer positions are on page 11 at the top. They are mixed in under the full-time regular wages, as well as the Medicare retirement fire. So they're mixed in there as well. And then on the revenue, which is further back, page 5 of 10 under fire, there's an offsetting revenue of $261,580. That's the portion of the federal grant for 2020.
Here we go. I think it's going. Jeff, you found it?
Yep.
Okay.
Do you have a follow-up question?
No, I was just wasn't sure if it was.
Yeah, we didn't put it on a separate line. It's mixed in with those full-time wages. Yeah.
Great. Further questions on page 12 here? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. So we're good there. Where were we before?
24.
24. So we'll move on to 24. Yep, Selectwoman Boyd.
47,120, operating supplies. Again, our year-to-date is really low. Under fire EMS.
Yep. So the operating, so that one, was it October 31st, is that the sheet you're looking at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that one there, those are our operating supplies for like EMS, any EMS supply that we would use on the ambulance.
Mhm.
So that line is actually almost spent now.
Okay, thank you. And then just below that, 47,950 for the turnouts,
Yep.
is that getting spent in the?
So that's one of the line items, the budget committee and the select board approved us to move some funds earlier in the year for our ambulance remount.
Mhm.
That's one of those line items, so
Okay.
several of these line items in this particular page go to that ambulance remount.
Okay.
So that will be spent and covered. Covered.
I think you mentioned that the firefighters are also EMS certified.
Yes, sir.
So how do you break that out? I'm looking at a budget here for EMS, I'm looking at a budget for the fire side.
Yes.
How do you bring that together? I'm not understanding too well.
Yeah, so there's a special EMS fund. So anytime somebody's transported to the hospital, there's a bill that's sent to them.
Yeah.
So those funds come back to offset this page that you're looking at.
So if a firefighter goes out and performs an EMS.
Yeah.
And the cost of that go into the EMS budget?
So the cost of the full-time firefighter would be on the other page we were looking at. And then if it was a person that's doing EMS only, it's like some of our part-time employees, you'll see some of the wage lines would come out of this line. So it's kind of a split that we do as far as the calculation of how many shifts we're going to need throughout the year of a part-time employee covering EMS.
Interesting.
Selectwoman Boyer.
Thank you. 53,410, equipment.
Yep.
You reduced it by a little bit. But again, our year-to-date is really low.
Yeah, and that, again, those funds are going to go to the ambulance.
Okay, thank you. And then
You're welcome.
the last one, they have 49,200 to the general fund. Why is that like that?
I'm going to lean back for a second. Because they can answer that one, because I had the same question.
Got it.
The sewer enterprise fund and the EMS special revenue fund have an appropriation to transfer over to the general fund that we record as a revenue
Right.
for the accounting services and the audit portion that is paid out of the general fund. So basically those funds pay back the general fund for the work the finance department is doing to do all the reconciliations and then work with the auditor at the end of the year. So.
Okay, thank you.
I did better than I
Yep,
would have.
Eileen.
Could you just explain what the services are under 52,190 and what the increase is? Service fees?
Yes.
Yeah.
So those are every time that we bill a patient and that money's collected back, there's a third-party billing agency that takes a percentage, and based upon call volumes increasing year to year, that number is going to go up.
Do they get paid only when you get paid? Percentage of what you get paid?
Jared.
Special detail wages, line 41195.
Yep.
Looks like we have an increase to $6,000 from $4,500. What additional details are we planning on doing next year?
Yeah, so we have the 2020 election coming over at St. A's. So there'll be a lot of details over there. We've already had one vice president visit already, so there'll be more. Every election year there is.
Permission to follow?
Yep.
But for those, do we get reimbursed by their political campaign committees?
Before I answer that.
We're fortunate that there's a good relationship with the college, that we actually bill the college for both police and fire special details. So we get that back and we record that as a revenue.
Offsetting revenue.
Okay. Thank you.
We know somebody going to the college shortly, so.
Thank you. Further questions here on page 24?
I
Yep.
just have kind of one
Sure.
overarching question regarding the, budget to actuals. There's a considerable variance between those. I mean, what are we doing to kind kind of tighten up that gap. I mean, if we look at from 2018 to budget to actuals, there's about $120,000 kind of unspent variance between the two. It's a pretty considerable drift. About an $80,000 budget.
Are you asking me? So I can answer you. So as Chief mentioned, a lot of the stuff gets billed at the end of the year. So we already know those numbers. I mean, this.
I'm talking about the 2018 actuals, and then, yeah, we can stymer into 2019, because that's what, let me see.
So what are you trying to compare? 2018 actuals versus what?
Versus the
2018
budget for 2018.
And then looking at the 2019 budget to current actuals.
So you're asking me what we're doing to make it tighter?
Right.
So 2018 is a little difficult for me to talk to. It wasn't a budget I created, but I'll take
I understand that.
I'll kind of.
I think I can assist as well. If you look at one of the biggest variances is in the regular wages part-time. Prior to Chief Allard coming, there was a different philosophy of what credentials a part-time employee should have. And there was a search for EMS, paramedics, EMS advanced, with also a firefighter certification. And there was a lot of part-time shifts that were being foregone.
Yeah, unfilled.
Earlier this year, with the new chief taking over and working with the select board, they made an adjustment, and I think you'll see that number tighten up quite a bit, because that's of the 120, that's 70,000 right there.
So
and
specifically, you're saying that number is going to tighten up for part-time wages. That number will come down. Am I reading into
I
what
think
you're
the
saying?
variance between budget and actuals will tighten
closer.
up, will be closer.
And another thing I was just going to add to kind of like, this was also budgeted, and I'm just speculating on what Chief O'Brien had done, but he was budgeting at fully staffed, and I don't think at any point during last year, or even almost 2 years, were we fully staffed at any point in time. So that has a big impact on that number. And then, like Derek said, the changes now in what we're paying specific people, that will kind of move things too, because we were hiring EMS paramedic providers that also had to have dual certifications, which we have kind of shifted that, so that way the wage scale will kind of shift as well. And I think also at that point in time too, we had a significant amount of overtime because our full-time members were covering for the fact that we didn't have enough part-time or on-call members. Anything else to that? That was a big thing though.
I think that's the biggest number that stands out to me, and that variance will tighten up. And I know the chief, with the changes that were made to the ambulance remount, you may not see the year-to-dates here when we get to next year. Those year-to-dates are still going to be up, but you'll see it on the ambulance side because he made an adjustment on that project.
Also, would you say that the revenue for, after we switched billing providers, that's also changed? The impact on that? Yeah, go ahead.
So it's a great question, and that's difficult to predict.
Yep.
We're only 6 months in. We are seeing some positive trends though with the new billing company. I track it almost weekly to see how we're doing, and we're fast approaching last year's number. And I think once we have one full year with that new billing company.
So last year we had to write off a significant amount of money that our billing company was unable to collect from services put out by EMS. We switched billing providers, which was a project that Chief Allard took on, to a new provider that's been hustling for us. And with our call volume increase, hopefully the offsetting revenue will kind of increase year over year as our call volume does too. Not that that's directly impacted here, but just kind of an overall forecasting that they're doing to try to, tighten it up a bit.
Now, as part of that forecasting, are you also measuring like response times, call volumes, and all that as well, so we have a trend so we can see the impact of the service that we're providing while we're obviously increasing staff, things like that?
Yeah, those are some key measurements that I'm tracking right now. And one of the, I believe you had asked the question about a software line, and that's one of those softwares that we put on we started this year, and it'll be 2020, tracks that exact information and how are we improving, or where do we need to improve, for exactly for response times.
All right, so in the past, we've not done any metric gathering in terms of.
To the best of my knowledge, no. When I got here, yes, because if you were to go into my office, there's a lot of matrix that we backtrack.
Also, with doing the SAFER grant application process, we did a pretty massive data dump. And from that, Chief Allard kind of pulled out, and his team kind of pulled out the things that we're going to kind of measure ongoing, because the reporting capacity for that federal grant is pretty significant. You should have him show you sometime all the charts and graphs.
Please,
It's
yeah.
pretty amazing.
Please, come on in.
It really is incredible.
It's pretty cool.
But we need to have those metrics with the 4 new members, call time, call volume, time of day. You know, all of that stuff is very important to us seeing how this goes, switching to the 24/7 schedule, and having the data to back up that that's a good choice.
What goes into service fees? Sorry, $521.90?
So those are the fees that we pay our third-party billing company. Those are the ones when we collect the money, they get a percentage of that.
So it's all.
That's the service fee.
But you don't know what that's going to be, right?
So there's a set rate that they charge us. So you're right, we don't know year to year,
Right.
and it's an estimate based upon call volume.
That's the only fee? That's the only for the billing? Nothing to do with the category to be in there?
Correct.
Do we have any idea how much in the past, when you switched over from one company to the other to develop, how much money was uncollectible before that?
Just to mention, that goes by a time limit. I think that's an important thing.
It does.
They don't
It's
collect
a
it.
really big question to attempt to answer. I do know there was lots of missing data. Our issue, internal, that we weren't providing to the billing company, that when I came on board, stopped. So what would normally happen is, as a provider comes back from the hospital, they do their report, like they did years ago, they would submit it to a billing company. No one was really monitoring what data was going, data going to the billing company. So I stopped that, and there are several checkpoints, and that until all that information's in there, such as billing information, a correct address, social security numbers, it stays internal now. It doesn't even go to the billing company until that report is 100% complete. So a lot of times when somebody goes to the hospital, they don't have their insurance information for another 24 hours, 48 hours. So we follow back up with the hospital and get that information. And this new billing company also double checks it after we even submit it. So there's a lot of, it's getting better.
Do you still have a board or something that would review for somebody that can't pay?
So there's a hardship policy, that we have in there.
So if they can't pay, you is forgiven.
So there's a process they'll go through, and they have to provide data to us. And then,
But what about the ones that are deadbeats? Do you put it in collection agencies?
so yes, we do go to collections.
So you're specifically, I want to clarify, you're specifically saying there's a good chunk that are going unpaid because there's not enough information on the file, is that?
So in the past.
Yeah.
Not now, no.
In the past, like last year, per se, or?
Prior,
Yeah.
in the past,
Okay.
prior to me arriving back at Goffstown, I would say that there was a good percentage of reports that went to the billing company that didn't have all the information, and the prior vendor didn't do a great job trying to get that information from the hospital. That was one of the reasons why we made the transition. I had done this at a previous fire department because of that same reason with that vendor. So pretty much knew coming in the door that what I was walking into.
So I don't want to punish you for doing a good job.
That's okay.
But how much do you think you might increase revenue by?
So again, this is like one boy asked earlier. It's kind of hard right now. We're only 6 months in, so it's going to take at least a year to figure out kind of where they're at, what their collection rates are. From what I see so far, they're improved, and we only have like 3 months worth of collections because they bill out 30, 60, 90 days. So it takes like 90 days before we actually start seeing revenue. So it wasn't until September when we really started seeing any revenue from the new vendor. So it's going to take a little while to really answer your question.
So I want you to have the incentive to keep on doing that.
Oh, of course.
However, knowing like, oh, we will want to take a look at, what the revenues actually turn out to be in the future and be like, oh, can we offset this, right?
So
Whether
it's-
we can offset this or improve services. Either
So
way.
it's certainly yes and yes, because this whole budget revolves around what we get back, right?
Yeah.
Because it's funding this. So it's really, really important to stay on top of it.
Yep.
I
Select
will
Board
just
Board.
say too, just so you know, this is Chief's expertise, so if you ever want to sit down and talk,
Go on in.
he'll talk about this all day, just so you know. Yeah, he's
So data
very
and
into
numbers.
it. But what I was trying to allude to before, and this might help kind of the process-wise, is we are very new into it, but there is that data collection point on our end is kind of like the last barrier we have before it goes out into the collection world. The previous provider that we had was not doing a great job at their portion of it. So it's like the patient to the fire department to the collection agency, then back to the fire department. And if all three of those things don't work, we don't get money. So on our end, we're trying to do as much as we can to make sure that our process is really good. I've partnered with a new provider that's doing a much better job for us. But we don't have enough data to know if it's kind of really paying off, but also looking at call volume and stuff like that. But that's what we're hoping. But they have a certain window of time in which they have to collect for Medicare, Medicaid. Private insurance is different. I know you could talk about this way better than I could, but so that's kind of part of it too. We have to get the information out the door very quickly so that they can start, trying to collect within that window, because once it's gone, there's some rules about what can and can't happen. as far
And
as
before I
money
forget,
goes.
I do want to give credit to our finance director and Brenda Barsh, our executive secretary, because they were instrumental in making this change. We spent, I don't know how many conference calls with this vendor, so before I forget.
If I could give you a gold star, I would.
All right.
I think we have to appreciate those moments where we're doing things that are proactive.
Okay, I believe we're still on page 24 here. Any further
Sorry, I just
questions?
wanted to toot their horn
Oh,
and
no.
explain the process.
No, I think that was good
before.
discussion. Yeah. All right. Lingering
that-
questions on 24?
That gold star was for Danielle, by the way.
It was. Danielle and Brenda.
And Brenda.
And Brenda.
I'm Brenda.
Okay. Seeing none, I'm seeing a CIP item on 25. Just want to make sure. That's not, is there another CIP for fire somewhere?
You have the one from the EMS fund, the 35,000 is for a new paint stretcher?
Yeah, so that's for a new stretcher that needs to be replaced. If you weren't here at the presentation, so this past year, we applied for an AFG grant, we were denied. We had one in 2019 budget, so we purchased that stretcher. When the grants open again for 2020, we're going to try to get our two stretchers that we still need to replace, and this would be utilized for the offsetting revenue for a grant, if we're successful. If not, we do have to replace the stretcher.
And then the other CIP item was on page 22, under fire operation vehicles.
And what's the vehicle there, Chief?
Yes, so we have two utility pickup vehicles. One is Lieutenant Connors in for fire prevention, and the other one is at our Bernardville station. That utility truck in the Bernardville station needs to be replaced. That one actually went through the Mother's Day flood, has some significant work that needs to be done, and we're advised not to do the work on it through DPW, so that's why this vehicle is in here. And so our Lieutenant Connors fire prevention vehicle will be downgraded to that station, and we would do a new pickup for fire prevention.
Any questions on that? Seeing none? Thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome. Thank you for the questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Kelly and Jared, if you'd like to give updates tonight, I'd like to take like a bigger look at where we stand with the budget right now.
Go ahead if you want.
I'll say, who's first on us? SAU updates. Chairman Cole knows, and I'll share with the rest, we will be bringing forward our warrant articles, which will include our collective bargaining agreement, to this committee on Tuesday of next week. We're hoping to do it today, but unfortunately, we were not able to meet yesterday. For some reason, people don't like driving in the snow. I am not one of them. I would love to have gone to a meeting. But both Scott Gross and I will be here on Tuesday to present those at Cole's pleasure on the agenda. That's the only update I have.
Great. I'm sorry, you said next Tuesday.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for town things, we have done some 2020 bid projects for bridges to get some ideas. One is within what we expected, one is insanely over what we expected. So we're kind of looking at some urgency of different bridge projects, which, as you all know, can be very, very expensive. So we're kind of reorganizing, trying to get some numbers before things go out to vote, just so we have a better idea and can kind of jump on some of those things that are going to take a while. We're looking at credit card redemption. Our finance director switched us to a credit card that was better interest rate, gave us some money back options. So we're looking at kind of what to do with that. We've racked up some pretty significant points. Cash back is an option, so we'll go back to the funds, things like that. So it's kind of great that we made that transition and can, get money back on things that we were already spending money on. And then I do want to talk about the special articles and the unassigned fund balance, but I think that's what you kind of want to talk about. So
Yeah.
do you guys want to come up?
If you'd like to address this special, yeah, if you'd like to come up
You wanna
for that
do it all at
discussion.
once, yeah.
So at what's today? Today's Tuesday?
It is.
At last night's select board meeting, Danielle and I made a recommendation to the select board that they consider using up to $750,000 from unassigned fund balance. And the way we came to that is we looked at where unassigned fund balance was at tax rate setting this year, minus the just over $1.5 million used at town meeting in 2019, and where we knew there were going to be some savings in this year's budget, where we're either underspent on some lines that we do not expect to spend before the end of the year, or that we may have had some revenues come in a little bit higher. So we made the recommendation that they consider using $750,000. Last night, the board did decide to fund the Fire Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund in the amount of $225,000 from unassigned fund balance. The Grassmere Town Hall Capital Reserve Fund for $100,000. And then to pull $300,000 out of CIP, the reclamation line. This is road reclamation. This was the increase that Megan had put in for 2020 to do a similar article that we've done in the past few years, where we do the increase from unassigned fund balance with language that would then go into the default the following year. So the board made that decision, and then they also, at this point, have set aside the 125 as a potential area to use that tax rate setting to reduce the tax rate next fall. I guess that still could be changed between now and the time we get to either after public hearing or deliberative. And then the board also removed one CIP project from the towns. This was the townwide CCTV security camera project that was under admin. That was something that IT and I had originally proposed for 2021, and CIP had moved it into 2020. And the board removed it from the operating budget and suggested that we reapply next year to CIP to put that back into 2021. And then the last item regarding special articles, last night Crispin House came before the board and reduced their request for the special article down to $20,000, and the board took a vote to unanimously support that special article and push that forward to deliberative session and public hearing. So that's kind of the update of where we are now. And then this committee, on your meeting on the 21st, had taken out $74,500 from DPW budget as well. So.
Great. Does any of that change our bottom line on the big sheet?
It does. I wish I would have handed that sheet out because it did have a small error in the tax rate calculation. That sheet that's dated 11/19/2019 has an estimated tax rate of $9.07. That should actually say $9.26. There was an error that we did not catch until last night after the select board's meeting. But with the removal of that CIP project, the increase from reclamation taken out and put to unassigned fund balance, we're calculating a tax rate right now as $8.96. And that also includes the $74,500 that this committee had voted at the 21st meeting to pull out of DPW. There were 7 lines that you pulled out of there. So right now, I would say the budget committee, you're at $8.96. And then there's the Crispin House special article would represent an extra penny on the tax rate at $20,000.
So the cuts that we made, is that included
In
this
the
number?
896?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And we can have updated.
That's our cuts and what the select board took action on.
Yes, and we can provide an updated sheet for you the next
I
time.
think that would be great, yeah.
Yep.
Any questions with that information? Do you have a percentage increase?
I don't currently, so we can have that information on what the default budget. I know the other question that Mr. Fletcher and some of the other members had asked for was to break out the increase on how much is wages, how much is the 53rd week. So we started looking at today on how much is the 53rd week, how much is wages, how much are the additional firefighters, which does have an offsetting revenue, where CIP is. So we'll try and categorize where into bigger pictures, bigger buckets of where those increases are and what portion of that percentage they fall into. So we started working on that today.
And I will just say the 125 that we didn't, we just put to offsetting the tax rate was with kind of the 53rd week and some of those other increases in mind. So just to kind of help offset that since it is a off-cycle year. But that's why it's not tied to anything specifically.
Would that be in a separate article?
No, it wouldn't.
It would
That would basically fall under the board's authority at tax rate setting time. And we can explain that in the voter's guide and at deliberative session, that's their intention to do.
All right, I'll have information there. Questions from folks? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, Derek.
Just so I can advise the town department heads, how would you like them to proceed? I know the school has a plan to bring their special articles on Tuesday. Is it your preference to have them come that evening or wait till next Thursday? Just want to see what the committee wants so I can advise them and they can make appropriate plans.
Yeah. At this point, we've gone through the budget and looked over line by line and stuff. I don't think we've come to a consensus that we're at our final number. I think we need to look at the updated numbers and then kind of review things. Just looking at the schedule, what does that leave us with?
Can I make a recommendation?
Yeah.
So Thursday, if we look at the overall budget and kind of figure out where we'd like to be with updates from the town and the school. I know you won't have your CRF until Tuesday, but any, kind of our most updated budget sheet that we have, maybe go through CIP at that point. And then Tuesday do school, Thursday do town for
The
a
final
final
on town.
overview, and then just push it on.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just because I've been at it for quite a bit. Where has the consensus been? I guess this is a general question, but where has the consensus been as to like how much we really feel like we need to cut down overall? Has there been a general consensus?
No. I think there's a lot of discussion with the 53rd week. That brings our default number up a little bit, and there's a few more projects in there. I think Jeff threw out the number of somewhere between like 2 and 3%, if I want to mischaracterize, as kind of the goal that you'd be shooting for.
To clarify, 2 or 3% below
increase.
what is
So it would be a 2 to 3% increase, which would be below the default budget.
significantly, right? Because it's about 4.5%?
4% is about what default puts us at already for an increase.
That's the only goal that's been thrown out there by any members so far. Personally, I think it's going to be tough to get. It's going to be tough to get to Jeff's goal. Bama was open to
It's,
a discussion.
we can look at it.
We
It's
can do
not
anything we
realistic.
want.
Yeah.
But, so after the changes, Derek, what do we think we're going to be looking at in terms of an increase?
I got in real trouble last night when I did this to the board, and I got home and looking at it early this morning, I said, oops, I made a mistake. So I'd be much more comfortable.
Next Tuesday?
No, working on it with the finance director and staff and get you those firm numbers for Thursday night so we can make sure we double check everything so we're not shooting from the hip of what we're looking at right now with the cuts, the changes that the select board has made, the changes that you've made, and give you a real, this is where we're at, and if you want to get to a certain percentage, this is the work that is still yet to be, that you still need to do.
So last year was, or this year, 814 was the tax rate. And as Derek said, with those, we would be at 896. I don't know the math off the top of my head, but just to put that into perspective. Go ahead.
And can I put a caveat on the 814? I know this year's tax rate was $8.14, but that was using funds appropriated by the state of New Hampshire that we did not budget for.
Yeah.
When the voters went to the polls, they approved an operating budget and warrant articles that would have raised it to $8.36.
Yeah, thank you.
So, yes, it was great that we got those extra funds. So, it's kind of, we're battling the 53rd week, the extra money in reclamation against a number that's artificially low due to some unanticipated revenue that came in.
But just to put that in perspective, right now, we still obviously have more work to do. We need to go through the CIP.
Two
Yep.
questions. Question one is, do we have an idea, because you're adding up like additional expenses 53rd week, do we have an idea of what the additional elections are going to cost the town? Because I think that was pretty significant when you added it all up.
Yes, that's in the easiest way to look at some of those
Well,
are on your
just-
summary sheet.
yeah.
But what we can do is we can highlight some of those anomalies, the 53rd week, the elections, some of our CIP projects, the changes that we have into insurance, off the top. Elections is a $40,000 change when we go from one municipal town election to a municipal election, presidential primary, a state primary, and a general election. So but yeah, we will try and do a job of highlighting where some of those big changes are.
Just didn't want to forget that one. And then the other question is, the money that was coming back, and I don't remember what the name of it was from the state, the one-time payment, the one-time money that was coming back. at one point we had talked about some of that going back for tax relief. Is that included in that 896 or not?
That is accounted for.
Okay.
For that 896, it's in the revenues. It's a separate line.
But it offsets it.
But it is offsetting, so that
I wasn't getting all
896
figurehead, but yes, I mean-
is already figuring that because the state biennial budget had a $20 million payment in fiscal year '20 this fall, and then as well as fiscal year '21. So we did budget for that this
Okay.
time.
Yep, Jared.
Mr. Chair, just a general question. I know that we're going to be looking at a holistic number next time we meet on Thursday, it sounds like. I'd like to try to understand if we can get updated actuals for this year, because that's going to be 11 out of our 12 periods, and we should have a good understanding of what our encumbered costs are going to be for the remainder of this year. That would really dictate to us what our actuals are going to be for 2 fiscal years and be able to do a comparison. I know it's a big ask, and I just didn't know if it's possible.
Is the ask to just see the encumbrances? Because that we have.
No, I mean, we should be able to see the fiscal actuals through November, and then at that point, we should know what we're going to be spending in December. We should be able to extrapolate that.
We
Yeah, kind of.
This blue sheet.
We could give you an updated one. I would just caveat it, it will not be perfect. We do end-of-the-month adjustments for banking services, gasoline, postage, benefits, a handful of other ones. So it won't be perfect, but I think it will give you a better idea of what we spent in the first 11 months. We can do that.
To your point, if we have all the encumbrances,
Kind of. I don't want to get that.
but if
We know some of them.
people have been pressuring department heads to get as many in as possible, we don't want too many at the end of the year. If we have them and we see shortfalls in here and it's not matching up with encumbrances, then we'll know, okay, those are the lines we really want to look at, right? So even if he
We can
doesn't
back
give us a
into
full
it.
sheet, we could take the encumbrances and kind of match that up. Is that?
It's a big ask, because, if I got electronically, I could just run a quick Excel macro to say,
Yeah.
okay, it's less than or greater than 10%. Those are the ones that we probably want to look at. That's what I would want to look at. But again, that's a lot of work to do, and I don't know if we have the appropriate people power to do that within the 2 days that we have.
Would it be more possible to have that not by Thursday, but by the next week?
We can get it to you, it'd be more accurate for the following week, but yes, we could do that.
That's just,
We used to get a printout at the end of every month
It's online.
of where we stood
Yeah.
in what we spent, what we haven't spent, or what's encumbered, and the final figure over here. So if you had one of them printouts for everybody, it would tell you how much was left for the month of December.
And right now, the finance office has prepared it through the end of October, because again, we're still waiting on some of those adjustments for November. Takes about a week and a half into the next
Okay.
month before we can
If we
finalize
had
it.
that would answer a lot of questions, I think.
Will you be asking the same of the school board?
our actual little, we
It's
can.
different, because,
It's,
Well, we
but
don't have it.
we're a year and a half out.
yeah.
For actuals, I'm sorry. What's the question?
Well, just if you're getting updated actuals versus,
We can provide the actuals through our A&F, that's fine.
I'm not asking for it, I'm just asking you. That's what you're looking at. If you've done that work on the school board already.
We have not put our combined items into the budget since we've reviewed them. I guess that'd be my statement.
Your school year also starts at a different
Yeah,
time, so it's not.
if anybody's actually watched the school meetings, I am one of the more fiscal hawks on it, and I don't like the idea of doing budgets upon budgets that haven't come before us or actuals yet, so we'll just leave that as it is.
Further questions, folks? All right, so plan will be Thursday night to get an updated large sheet, track that down, and hopefully set a goal for the committee. Review all CIP projects.
Well, can I say, we
Yeah.
have a majority of the department heads here. I think all, you're all here?
DPW, because of the storm the last 36
Right.
hours.
So can we maybe look at this now? I mean, it's 8:10. Just finish
I'm up for
while they're
reviewing it.
here.
Our committee members, okay, stick around to review CIP now? Great.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's coming Thursday in the town.
Derek, this new one that was presented to us tonight, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, yeah, good.
Is there anything updated on this?
Can I actually steal a handful, because I made enough copies for the department heads, but I didn't distribute any to them yet?
Like, yeah, you can have mine.
Thank you. So this is a similar sheet that we give to the select board as they work to get through the budget. Over on the right, you'll see the 2020 department head asks, select board. These match up with the account lines in your budget handout, but it also provides the detail, because a lot of times you have one line that may have multiple vehicles in it. And then what we did is, this also incorporates, there's been a few changes since the department heads presented to you. The Fire Command Car 2 has been removed. There was money taken out of reclamation on the second page by the select board last night, as well as moving out the CCTV security cameras. And then we've just copied those numbers over into the budget committee. And then we do a really rough calculation of what the tax rate impact of those projects are over in the right-hand column. Again, because of rounding, it's not an exact number, but it does give you an idea.
Great. So if we'd like to just go kind of project by project, in review, I guess, I'm not 100%, are you looking to just like put CIP to bed to some extent, or?
Well, no, but I think if we're gonna talk about these projects while the department heads are here, we still wanna come up with a whole number, right? So, in the vein of maybe not having them at the meeting where we discuss the overall, I just wanna go through them, if people have questions.
So, based on what we've been saying, I'm kind of envisioning a moment where, okay, we're asking questions of our department heads tonight. We've asked them line by line for multiple things. We're going to potentially ask, we might have a few questions about CIP. We are going to get more information, and then we're probably going to have a little bit of our own powwow where we're like, okay, do we need to make some cuts in specific areas? And at that point, we might not have department heads present. This is what I'm imagining might happen. We might not have them present, but if we're going to say that we want to make these cuts, we potentially would give them an opportunity to come and defend those at a later time. Is that correct, my imagining of that? That we're going to be like, okay, we need to make a 2% cut all around, so we're going to just kind of go. And these things have been defended. These things, I'm imagining, are things we're like, hey, this is not a big enough defense for this spending. We're going to have to make the cut here, right? And some department head might come in later on and ask if they can get that back. And if they have a good enough reason, we'll come back. Is that kind of where we're going with this? I'm being way too general about this, I know.
No. I think right now, what we're looking at with the 896 is 50 cents above the default budget. And even that default budget is an increase that I think it's asking a lot of taxpayers. That 50 cents is about $855,000 that we would have to get to the default level.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's in this, and I think part of reviewing this is to see if there's any way that we can trim that, because I think the 896 is probably a higher number than I'm comfortable with at this point. I would like to get that down. Part of that is reviewing this and taking an assessment and seeing if there's a number that the committee would like to get to.
What I was getting on that is we have 3 more meetings, potentially a few more, but
Yeah.
if we're doing the school on Tuesday, I'm trying to get us to like, let's kind of get through this stuff. So if we can review this tonight while they're here, we get our updated numbers on Thursday, do that school on Tuesday, and approve whatever we're gonna approve on next Thursday, then we're done. So I'm just trying to expedite us having to kind of talk about these over and over and over again. So that when we do get to the point where we decide if we're gonna go through stuff or not, then we're just gonna approve it at that point, next Thursday. So we're not asking them to come back on Thursday and the next Tuesday, just the following Thursday, and that's it. And at that point, if they wanted, while we're making our final cuts.
And now, I'm trying to think back to last year, because last year was a year that we kind of were a little bit more meticulous about doing line-by-line cuts. If we reach a point, I'm speaking ahead, but I think we need to kind of clarify on this. If we reach a point where we're saying we need to make deep cuts, and we say, okay, we're going to be pretty egalitarian about it, it's going to be, 1% of each person or whatever, 2% of each department, should we want to come up with that sooner than later, because we might want to give department heads an opportunity to kind of weigh in on that and say, this is where I'd like to see those cuts as opposed to here, right? I know this is a bottom line budget, so maybe it doesn't matter, but is that the thing we want to be able to do? Like, we want to set a deadline for ourselves, like by Thursday, when we have more information, we have to set that and say, this is our goal. That's the thing, we haven't been able to set a goal.
I would say by the end of the meeting of Thursday, we should have a set goal.
Okay. That way they can kind of be like, weigh in on it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's asked them if there's anything, that they could pull from their budget directly.
Well, I didn't even have to ask Derek last year, and he did it himself. I don't know if anyone remembers that.
TV cameras. I'm just saying, yes, that was my thought process. I'm trying to expedite us
Yeah.
from just dragging this on. Like, what's the numbers? What do we need to do? When are we going to approve stuff? Schools told us they'll have their contract on Tuesday. Great, we can do all their stuff that night while they're there. I just don't want to waste anybody's time. They don't need to keep coming if we're not doing anything, I guess, is a very blunt way of saying
And I think the point that I want to clarify is when push comes to shove, it's our budget, so if we feel like we have to make a certain amount of a cut, then we have to do that. And if it's at the 11th hour, we do it ourselves. Like, that's,
We can't do that until we get every figure on a piece of paper. School, town, the whole works. It's gonna tell us that the tax rate is so much money. And we need to then say, that's too much. And we gotta cut it 1%, and it's over the board. And until you got a figure with all the paperwork in front of you of all the what the tax rate's gonna be, and that includes the school. So until we have a final figure for the town and a final figure from the school, we can't do that. Or I can't do it. You may want to, but I can't do it until I see the whole picture.
Well, that's where we're trying to get. Hopefully Thursday we'll have that, Tuesday for the school.
okay. But, again, apologize for being verbose about it. I think I just want to clarify, right now, we're just allowing department heads basically to defend their budgets, right? So we're going to do that with CIP.
What? I don't get what you're
Reviewing
getting at.
the point of reviewing CIP right now.
The point of the questions we're asking tonight
Yeah.
is in part because we know that we might have to make cuts, or the intention of this board may be to make cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure we're very clear that that could occur, and when we get those numbers, we're going to have a goal. That was the main thing.
Yeah.
We agree. Thanks.
Okay. So going through here, on this first page, we have 3 cruisers in the budget. That's the only thing on the first page, 3 cruisers, the radio, and replacement of sidearms and shotguns. I think and then the rest of the projects are DPW, who's not here tonight. Is there any further questions while the chief is here about those projects?
Well, Mr. Chairman, just for information, I look at that CIP items, and I look over here, and it says tax rate, and it shows what it changes the tax rate. And, most of them are reasonable, real reasonable, except one of them. And it comes over here to a big question, is the reclamation, and the selectmen have already cut some money out of it. Last year it was $975,000, they cut $235 this year, and it's down to $130,000. And there's an area right there that, we need to know where it's gonna be spent and what it's being spent and how much is left over from last year that could be applied toward it, to come up with, what we figure if we wanna change something. That's an area that we can get some money to reduce tax rate.
So are you asking if there's money currently in the reclamation
Well,
budget?
last year there was money appropriated, the year before there was money appropriated. How much of that money is spent, how much is being carried over because the work didn't get done?
None, as far as I know, right?
I know in the past few years, and the problem I will point to that reclamation line. In 2018, there was $825,000. It shows $495 as an actual. But once it turns into a carry forward encumbrance, in the database, it doesn't pull from that table. So we can do some to see what it was, but DPW is, when they're carrying forward, they are spending those encumbered funds on projects, and I can talk.
And I understand that. I'm not saying that they aren't spending it on that.
But you want to know where?
But how much has been carried forward, and how much is there that will be used next year to finish a project? Because you can only do so much, and that's how it builds up, because we don't get them done. So if we got $400,000 or $200,000 in that account this year because it didn't get done, it's going to be done next year. That's just pushing it out some more. So, it's an area that we might be able to change something to help out.
No, I absolutely understand that, and I can have Mike Hillhouse come and try and answer those questions.
Yeah, but wasn't the problem with the budget in years past was cutting so much money from road reclamation that now we have so many roads in massive disrepair that it's causing massive problems, complaints,
And that's
pop
true.
tires online.
And that's true.
Yeah.
But if we aren't spending it all this year, and we hadn't spent it all last year, we have some funds there that they're gonna spend next year plus this. So what I'm saying is, it might be an area, I'm not saying it is, so we can help ourselves out a little. Because, when you look at these budgets, it's all the labor lines, that's where the money has gone. It's not because they want to buy some supplies or something. It's in them labor lines. And that's what's killing us from year to year. And that's why things like this get pushed back, because there was a time that they were spending $200,000 or they were spending $1.5 million for road reclamation, and it got pushed back, and they didn't appropriate that much. So now they're behind. But if they're behind, how much money haven't they spent over the last year that was there for them to spend because they couldn't get to it and do it? And if it's $200,000, it's $200,000, but it's going to be carried over. So that's, going to be added to that line. I don't know.
I will say, just from a select board perspective, that's why we've put an emphasis on the $300,000, is knowing that there are instances where it takes us in-house longer to do that. And if we expect to outsource anything, the cost of that is astronomical. There are certain things that we also don't have the equipment for. So it's imperative that we continue to fund that line so that we can catch up and stay level funded so that year-over-year projects don't happen. There are certain things, like we thankfully got our paving projects done just before the snowstorm, and there's things like that that will They have to do, when they have to do the second coat after the snow or paint the lines, you know, there's things like that. To my knowledge, and I'll let, if you guys know, or Mike, that there's nothing loomingly that we haven't finished that's moving into the next year. They are busting their butts to try to do as much as they can in-house and outsource. So I personally would argue that that is not a place I'm interested in touching any money from, because we're so far behind. It will be.
That's the point, we're so far behind, we aren't spending it all, maybe you can help us.
No, but we are spending it, I think. That's
Jared,
what I
did you have
look
a
at.
comment?
It just, I'm a numbers person managed by facts. So if I looked at the reclamation line for 2018 and 2019, budget versus actuals, we did not spend $329,608 in 2018. Our year-to-dates is significantly under what our budget is for 2019, which is $739,000 and some change. If you add those up, that's roughly $1,069,000 that we have budgeted but haven't spent. Is that currently within a line item that we're carrying over into the following year?
I would have to check on that. Again, the 2018 actuals, because I wrote this SQL report that this pulls from, may not reflect that carry forward PO. Typically, when they reclaim a road, they have to go through one winter before they put the final top coat on, and that's what they reserve, that's what they encumber those funds for, to bring that money forward. So after the first winter of that road, they can top coat it. So that 495, I'm willing to bet that has been spent. We'll look into that. And then as far as reclamation, I think that is, again, these are, looking at those actuals, they're probably artificially low because either bills haven't come in or that we haven't gotten the full encumbrance list from DPW at this time.
But to follow, we are expecting that we have a surplus of funds most likely in the reclamation line from the past 2 years.
No.
No. So we have spent roughly $1.7 million in the past 2 years for reclamation.
Minus the funds that will be encumbered at the end of the year for finishing up work in 2020.
Yeah, I'm just I'm taking the two budgets and adding them together. So we've spent all that money and we're going to have no carryover.
No, there is going to be carryover. There is going to be encumbrances in that line, I anticipate, and we can get those
So
for
what
you.
Derek was saying was that if we start a project and the company, for whatever it is, whether it's all the overlays, whether it's the full reclamations, I know you could give more specific examples. If we start the project and they don't finish it till the next year and they don't bill us for the next year, those actuals don't carry over in the year that the project was done, but when the bill gets spent. So that, like Shirley Hill.
But we have estimates to complete the project that should have been forecasted. And what are those?
We can, again, I have Mike come and answer those questions. Those don't get reflected in the year-to-date actuals.
So Derek, you're saying, so 2018, 825 was budget. What's listed here is 495, but you're saying it probably is closer to 825?
Yeah, that's the amount that was spent before the year got closed out. When it gets carried forward, it goes into a new status. It's a carry forward encumbrance. It's in a different part of the database.
But that's not, so it's not being
Reflected.
in the 2019 year-to-dates, possibly, right?
Again, yes, because if DPW hasn't written a PO for those amount or told finance we need to encumber $500,000 and it's going to go to Continental for asphalt, then yeah, we don't have those. We don't have that reflected here yet.
That's what I'm saying. So it's not that we're not spending it, it's just not, unfortunately, reflected well.
But you know, every year, if you follow it through for a long period of time, you'll see that this is being carried over, like Derek says. There's money being
Well,
carried
I want to be
over.
able to answer, what you're asking, I want to be able to answer it with more clarity, because if I don't know what the actual
Right.
year-to-date is,
So
I
we're asking him
can't,
for the figure.
I can't actually answer the question of how far off we are in terms of estimating how much work we can get done in a year and how much we actually can get done,
Nobody
right?
can right now. He's got to find out.
But to be clear, like, is that something that is mostly just happening here? Like, when I'm looking at my year-to-dates, because I usually just, when I'm looking at past year's budgets, right, at 2018, right, that's already closed out.
Yep.
When I'm looking at that, I am normally looking at these sheets thinking the actuals are including all the encumbrances and everything. You're saying it's possible that they're not.
No, yeah, once you go into a new year, the Munis system that we use segregates it completely different, because at that point, the auditor doesn't look at an encumbered PO is no longer a year-to-date. It is or designated fund balance. It is fund balance that is set aside for that contracted PO. So it goes into its own pool, and it never changes that year-to-date actual.
It doesn't change that, and it doesn't change the year-to-date on the year forward from that.
Correct. It does in a revised budget column, but we don't provide you the revised budget column that includes, we provide you only 1 year snapshot at a time. We don't give you the gap carry forwards as well.
Is there a way for me to have a column for that carry forward for past years? Because, like, literally, I'm looking at these whole sheets, and I might be not looking at the correct numbers on a lot of this then. It seems like a...
It's all in the database, and with time, we can all get it out. I think we've always traditionally, when we went to the new financial software, we gave the same exact format that the Budget Committee has gotten for years and years and years. So if the Budget Committee, I'm not opposed to changing it. Can I get that to you for Thursday? No.
Yeah.
Can I get it to you for next week? I don't know.
This might be a for next year type of thing.
Yeah, it may be, if you want to get into revised budget, and that's a hard thing when you're budgeting against actuals.
Somewhere along the line, we know what the total cost of that project was.
Yes,
There must be something out there, as you're pointing out.
Yes.
We can figure that out, right?
yes.
That will answer some of the questions. The cost, we budgeted $100,000. 2 years later, it cost $100,000 to do that job.
What happens if you have 300, let's say you got $300,000 left over to finish Black Rock. So that's to finish the road, because this year they overlaid it. Next year, they're gonna tar it all the way. And when they get all done, the bill comes to $200,000. So there's another $100,000 just moved over here.
Typically, what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to release those funds, because they're supposed to be encumbered for a project with a specific vendor.
So do they go back to reduce the tax rate the following, that year? Or do they go back into unreserved fund balance?
Anytime that you release an encumbered PO from a prior year, we provide that data to the select board. So last night when they got their 2019 list, on the second page were, hey, these are some of the POs that we've had outstanding for a while. When those get released, they go from a designated fund balance to an unassigned fund balance. That's an auditor's adjustment that the auditor makes.
I think the overall concern is if we're putting money in this line, your concern, Richard, is if we're not going to spend it, why are, like if we're physically not going to be able to spend it, why are we putting it there? That's your
It's
concern.
being carried over and you don't get to it, you know? So it's an area of a possibility to reduce that tax rate. I don't know what it might be, of 1%. 2%.
Again, I'll just say heavily funding that line gives us the ability to outsource more, so hopefully we don't have carryover projects. I understand what you're saying, but it's something I'm willing to stand firm on, that line truly needs to be funded, or it's going to cost us a lot more money in the long run.
So So we're going to spend 975, like, with the outsourcing, we're gonna spend the 975,000 this year.
Potentially, like, that's what we have to look at with the new DPW.
But if we don't, I understand potentially, but if we don't, that's $200,000 that can be applied somewhere else,
Yeah.
that someone paid for, right? That we create a budget, we try to match, right, our projected with our actuals as much as possible, so that we're asking a taxpayer to pay taxes, we're saying this is what you're paying for.
Yeah, the difference is we have
Well,
40%.
can I finish that?
Sure.
When we are off by a significant amount, what we're doing is we're saying to residents, we're saying, we asked you to pay for this, okay? And this is what you're paying for, but in actuality, you're paying for something else. That every time our lines are off, okay, I'm saying by a significant amount, if it's off by 10%, whatever, that is us saying to residents, we asked you to pay for X, but the money that you gave to us to pay for X, you're actually putting towards Y. So that's why we have to do as good of a job as possible, I believe. We have to do as good of a job getting those numbers lined up, reviewing back year by year. That's, I think, in the past, we've been like, hey, let's get 5 years on here so we can really see, not on these sheets, but just so we can kind of review. We want to see how good of a job are we matching up so that we're asking people to spend money on the things that we're asking them to spend money on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, that money, I understand on paper it's not good, and I'm only defending it because I feel very strongly about the road plan, and I understand
Yeah.
why it is the way that it is. So you're not wrong by any means, and we definitely should make sure that everybody fully understands that. What I will say about the road plan is that, and I don't know if you were here for that chart section, and I'm happy to share it with you after if you don't have it.
Well, you know,
The fact that we have 40% of our roads that are in the fair margin, right? Those are roads that are supposed to be overlaid regularly. We're not doing that. We have a portion of our roads that are in, I forget what it is, bad, failed, almost failed, is the equal amount of roads that we have that are good. We have not done preventative maintenance regularly in any way, shape, or form. We've basically the tide is turning on our pie chart of what's good, right? If we don't do that preventative maintenance on our roads, we're gonna have more roads in the reclamation, completely, re-shimming, the stuff that costs us $1 million to do.
Yeah.
So by putting more money into that project, and with a solid road plan, which is being worked on, is that we can do that preventative maintenance, that we can call in Continental, come do all of our overlays, and really solidify the roads that we've already put an investment into. So I get what you're saying, is that, you want to be sure that that's what's happening.
And it sounds like that's what you want to be happening, right? You want that to be happening.
It has to, yeah, it has to happen, or we're gonna, essentially, because it's been underfunded for so long that we've done one big project a year, 2 big projects a year. And I'm not the DPW director, this is just something that I personally, as a taxpayer, want to make sure that we're spending money now on stuff so that we can maintain it, so that we're not having to spend $1 million on each road and having a good portion of our roads that are failed. And what that means and how much that costs, because year over year, our asphalt costs go up, our bridge repair costs go up, everything goes up year over year. So if we're not doing the work now to protect that stuff, it's gonna cost us exponential amount of money in the future. So that's why the board has voted to stand behind putting more money into that consistently, is so that we can get back up to a point where we're able to do the repair projects, the rebuild projects that we need to do, but also can focus on spending the money to do those overlays. We also don't have the in-house equipment, so we have to outsource that stuff. So making sure that we have an actual plan. Every year that we defund that or take money out of that is, more of that kind of stuff that we could be doing.
So is part of that, I guess now we have to ask the question, with us significantly increasing to, 1.6 million or 1.3 at this point, is part of that plan a readjustment of how DPW does its work? Like, we actually have to change the way it operates? Okay.
I have a Derek, this may be a simple way to solve this, at least get a quick answer. Is there any way you can get an idea of what the DPW encumbrances would be for Thursday? Because if you came back and said to us their budget was 975, they've spent 235, and they've encumbered $500,000, we're going to know right off the bat we don't really have that much of a difference.
We can ask that question of them.
I mean, they should by now have some rough idea. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it is going to be rough, and it's going to be based on, because I know that even as late as this week and next week, they are still doing significant work out on Shirley Hill.
Right.
As well as the invoices are still, but yes, we can ask for
But
that.
they should have a pretty, I mean,
Yep.
they should have a
Yeah,
fairly
they have
good
a
idea.
projected amount of where they're trending, yep.
And at least then, I think we would have an idea of what the gap is, and you could look at it and go, it's not that much of a gap, or we could say, okay, we do have an issue.
Okay, I think we've talked about that a lot. I've had time to look over the other projects here in CIP. I personally have no other issues or questions with the projects listed in here. And I think to Richard's point, besides the reclamation, I think anything is worth discussion.
I just have-
But the reclamation is the biggest chunk. Eileen, if you...
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I just
Oh,
have
yeah.
one question, only because for the life of me, I can't remember what the difference is, but the select board for the sports complex approved 130, and originally, I think you had asked for 100, so what was the 30,000? Kelly, you might be able to answer what the 30,000 difference was.
Yeah, correct.
Is that the trees?
No, this is for trees and fencing and a small outbuilding for the pump. The only reason it's 100,000 in the department head is some miscommunication on our part, an error that we put in there. And rather than fix the error in the department head, we left it in there for questions at every budget committee meeting.
Well, I'm glad I didn't disappoint you.
Thank you.
Just to see if we're watching.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Did anyone have any other questions on CIP there? Okay. So, as I said earlier, right now where we stand is we're about 50 cents over default. In default is a 4.5% increase. Derek, I know we've talked about, I think tax effort is the term that we've used. So on the town side, right now, for whatever our median home value is in Goffstown right now, kind of what would that look like?
I don't have that data with me, but we have prepared that in the past, and I think I presented that to you back in October. So we'll update that and give you the default to show that on the town side, the tax effort has gone up 1.1% a year. So the town portion of the tax bill has gone up 1.1%, and on a median home, what that effect is. So yes, this is a significant increase over last year, but over the last 10 years, we've averaged well below what is typical for, I think, for a town this size. So,
But the other part of that formula is how much your property is worth and the changes that take place. Okay, if you've got a piece of property that was $200,000 and it got reevaluated at $225,000, right? Your tax rate changed the same, but this guy paid more money.
yes, as your value goes up.
So you stop and think about it. The senior people, right, living on a fixed income from Social Security are selling their houses and moving out. And they're doing that because they can't afford it. And what's happening is, after they sell a house, they sell it to some younger people that move in with 2 or 3 kids. The school system gets up. There's a big change happening there all the time, you know? So when you say it's 1%, that's great. But my taxes, I pay more. I'm not saying I pay more, I do. But I'm saying I pay more, they pay more.
Yep, Jared.
I guess I asked a general question. Would it be helpful if we had the tax rates before the actual reassessment that occurred? Would that help us?
I don't know. That's
I mean, that's what we provided as part of the school to say, okay, this is what the tax rate before the assessment was, this is what after the assessment was, just to show the variation that I think you're listing. I don't know if that's possible.
I just want to make sure I understand.
It would take a year before you rebate it.
You're talking about a raw number, 1%.
The tax
increase,
rate,
right?
what you have here is the tax rate that was used at, when the bill was sent out. And what we can do is take a property that is your median property and back it out year to year of what.
That's what I'm thinking of, is looking at it from a household perspective, just the difference. I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And Derek, to clarify, when you were saying the 1%, is that what you were talking about? 1% increase in terms of the actual burden to?
I'm talking about municipal tax effort, the amount that we collect as a whole for the town side of the tax has been, on average, over the last 10 years, just over 1%.
Thank you.
Well, I've been here
There's
for 10
one,
years.
yeah, there's 1%. There's your town
That's
side,
the
and
town
then,
side.
yeah, we also have school side,
You don't
and on a tax,
I am only representing the town.
yeah.
Right.
We have the school side, you also have county,
And then the
you
state
have
edu-
SWEPT in there too. So, dealing with all that. Okay. It didn't seem like we had any other questions on CIP. We're good there. It sounds, I mean, general consensus, I think we've been here for a while talking at this. Kind of general consensus, are folks comfortable with the 896 number? Would we like to get it down on the town side? How much would you like to get it down? Kind of gonna put everyone on the spot here. Let's get a little bit of movement here. Spencer, what are your thoughts?
To be honest, like to get as low as possible.
Okay.
I thought of a number off my head. You said it was what, 4.5% above right now, or
That's a default budget, yeah.
so the default is 4.5%
So-
last year, or we are currently at the proposed budget is 4.5% above the default
For this year,
this year.
yes.
All right. I would like to get close. Can't get it to default. I know it's gonna be extremely difficult, but we can get closer to the 2 to 3% increase.
Well, to be clear, 2 to 3% increase would be below default, so
I want 1.5% underneath that one.
is what you're asking for, yeah.
I'll be on board with that. Well, it's all-
And just to be clear, so on the ballot, the budget committee will have a budget, and then there will be the default number, and the voters get to either approve our budget, and if they do not, then we would go to default.
Sure.
Great. Richard?
Yeah, I would say 2.5% is good.
Okay. Peter? Great to have you back, by the way.
Happy to be here. Happy I get to be here on a Tuesday night. So you're talking specifically about CIP right now? That's what you're
No,
asking?
I'm
You're
talking
saying
about
overall?
overall on the town side, what are you looking for?
Frankly, I have no idea. I don't know what I'm looking for.
Thank you. Bill?
I have no idea either.
Great, thank you. Eileen?
I don't think we should be any higher than 861.
And what, do you know what
That's
percent?
what I was just backing into it. I had it earlier when I was playing with the numbers.
That'd be like 6%, wouldn't it?
About 7%.
It would be.
No, it's not that high.
No.
So last year, we were at 814, but realistically, we should have been at 836, except we had the offset. So that would mean, you're not that, I'm sorry. I hate this calculator. Derek can do this faster than I'm done.
Derek?
No, I've got a little cheat sheet that I finally pulled out. So 896, where you're at right now, is about 10.5%, 6%, which I don't recall who had said 6%, if that was Eileen.
Yeah, I was looking around roughly 860.
Yeah, 859 is what
Yeah,
I have on my
okay, so
cheat
that's
sheet.
6%.
Yep.
And that's what would be 2% over the default. The default's what, 4? 4.5?
4.5.
So I had done math based on what we had before that. To get to a 7% increase, we'd have to cut $696,227. I know we've cut some things since then, but that was an approximate number before our meeting before our DPW meeting, just to put that into perspective. So we cut.
This committee has pulled out 74, 500, and then the board pulled out 450
Right.
on Monday night.
Just to put it in perspective, that 861 is roughly about $156 increase per taxpayer on the average mean average home.
On the town side.
Yeah, on the town side.
Is that town and school?
That's just town.
Town side.
That's just town. We don't have school.
Great. Jeff?
Said 3%.
Okay. What would the tax rate be for 3%?
838.4 to 839.
839.
You'd have to cut still about $1 million.
Yeah.
Kelly, do you want to chime in at all? I'm not sure because you have.
I would be
select board budget.
interested, well, I mean, I'd be interested to see if we can even get to 7%, because that's quite a bit of money and nobody's proposing cuts, so I'm happy
We
to
can-
look at it, but, I mean, that's a lot, so.
Okay. Jared, your thoughts?
Well, I've tried to stay out of the town side for obvious reasons. I know, can you believe it? I just ask questions. I ask questions, but I don't try to make any motions. I think that with the increase of 53 weeks and what we have as the default budget, I think that, a 3% gross over 2019, I think that's way too aggressive. I know that I've been hearing from some of our constituents and some of our town people on the roads and the plans, and I know that people have been coming to the select board and during their public session talking about that. So I think that we haven't been spending enough there, but I don't think 12%. I think 12% is way too high. I don't necessarily look at a number. I'm hearing from our department heads. I believe in listening to our department heads, saying why, and they're being very articulate on what they need and why they need it. And I trust our people to do their job because that's what they're paid to do, and they do it very well. I just think it should be above 4.5. I think it should be probably above 6%, but I don't think it should be 12%. I don't have a solid number.
Okay. No, I think that was clear. I appreciate that. Richard?
Well, I guess I have a problem. I really don't want to see it to go more than 2% everything. But that's probably not a realistic figure because when you get all in wages and what it's actually costing us, and you look at it over the years, there's not much you can do. You've got to have all this other stuff to do your job, and yet it's killing us from buying all this other stuff. And the road plan was a big issue. 20 years ago, when I sat on this budget committee, and I've been here since 1997, they were just coming out with a road plan, and it was a lot more money than it is now. And over the years, they cut it back, and they cut it back.
And we're paying
because
for it.
they couldn't keep up with it, because if they hired contractors, it cost more money, and that's where the money was gonna have to be spent. So the town started doing it themselves, which is a good thing, but it doesn't keep up with it. And now we're asking for more money, the town's gonna do more, or maybe they're gonna hire a contractor, I don't know.
It's a mix.
Huh?
It's a mix of both.
And so, it's gone from $2 million down to $1 million. It's down to 975 or whatever it is, and now it's going back up again. It needs to. I can show you some roads that you wouldn't want to drive a horse wagon over.
Oh, I get sent pictures of them from folks on Facebook all the time.
They're very short roads. They're not major highways. But, they haven't been touched for a number of years. We're doing the major roads. And so we aren't keeping up with it. So what's the answer? So, cut it back. If you're not spending the money, then you don't need to appropriate it. Every time you appropriate more than what you're using, then the tax rate goes up, and it doesn't go down. It keeps going up. So I say 2%,
But
and I don't want to see more than 3.
Carl,
Not more than 5%, but I'm shooting from the hip, and I'd like to know more about the school budget, because that can help as well.
Yeah, school budget, from our numbers was 2.3%, a little under 2.3% from the prior year. I could get the numbers.
Well, it's got to be part of the whole picture,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That said, I mean, yeah, we've been over for several years, right? So 2-point-something% from prior year, but we already know that last year's number was over by some amount, just the same way the year before that was, right?
The difference.
They over budgeted.
The difference with the school budget versus the town is we cannot keep our unfunded, unreserved fund balance. That has to be returned back to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
So we aren't able to keep 6 million, 7 million, whatever the town has right now, that's returned back. So when they do that bad forecasting, I call it bad forecasting, and our actuals come underneath, that is being returned back unless if they're being, and I'm going to use the term Christmas in July, which I disagree with. And I think that we've really stopped that based on some of the habits that have occurred in the past school boards.
Thank you.
We don't get that luxury.
So, the school district will get, what is $1.5 million in that special.
I think it was 1.3 million
Yeah.
that Mr. Gross.
And so now they're looking at using some of that to increase the kindergarten.
Yeah, that will be a warrant article.
There'll be a warrant article.
Yeah.
So then there'll be a certain amount of money left over. So does that money go back to the general fund so that you can't spend it, or is it going to actually reduce the taxes? It ain't going to reduce the taxes unless you make a special article that says that you take the rest of it and reduce tax rate.
So for the $1.3 million, I believe in this money these will come up as warrant articles on Tuesday. I believe we're looking at $800,000 for the portable for Glen Lake. I think it was $125,000 for a generator for the high school on the ballot. And of course, out of the 1.3, the balance will be returned back to the taxpayer.
How?
The next budget year will be an unreserved fund balance and it's returned back.
If it goes into the general fund.
It does not, no. When the school calculates their tax rate, when they return the funds, they did, I think, $1.5 million this past year. It comes off the school portion of the tax rate. It's done in that calculation. It basically reduces the amount that the town has to collect for the school.
Yeah, like I said, with the municipalities, it's a little different where we can't keep that fund balance over and over, and that's how we got, I don't know how we got that 10.1 million.
So school funding, a lot of it goes, that you don't spend, goes back to
The taxpayers.
the general fund.
No, it goes back to the taxpayers.
Wait a minute. If you don't spend $500,000,
It can only go back to the tax.
doesn't it go back to the?
No.
No, it does not. It reduces the amount that we collect on behalf of the school. That's why in 2018, when the $10.3 million was returned, and if you look at the tax bills, the school portion of the tax rate dropped significantly because that is how they return it. They collect less in taxes.
As an example, if we had $500,000 left over and the budget was $1 million, we'd only collect $500,000 in it each year. That's how it's returned back.
Okay, so going around here, numbers I heard, so highest number proposed was a 6% increase or in 861. That is about a $600,000 decrease off of what we have in front of us right now.
Mine was 7.
7, okay. I'm I'm going to use the 6% for this. And then the other number I heard was a 3% increase. So, and that's about $1 million cut. So there's about $400,000 here. But I think what my ask of the departments, if other folks on the committee are up for this, we're looking at about $600,000 minimum that we would like to cut out of this current budget. And then there's also folks who are looking for another $400,000 to cut out. So I guess our ask would be to the departments to review budgets, and we're looking to cut $600,000. So wherever you would cut money from to bring that to us, and then there's another $400,000 I think it's on this committee to kind of find. But I think the top level I heard was a 6%, which is about $600,000 off of where we are now. What are some thoughts on that?
What number did you use this, what the number from what's already?
896 is the number
But did you
that I'm
use
cutting
eight-
off
oh,
of.
Did you use last year's 814 or 836?
For the,
Last year's tax rate?
well, the 6% increase is based off of the
Just-
814.
Okay, the 814, okay.
Yeah. Is that correct?
Well, last year, if I understood this right, it was 814, realistically, it should have been 836, but we had gotten some one-time money.
Yes.
Right. So, if you use 814, that's fine, because that's really what people aren't going to think about the 836, they're going to think about the fact that last year was 814 and this year was 8, whatever.
I think the purpose of, in voting for the same money, the purpose of that is property tax relief and giving it to money to folks. I think what that does in the property tax bill, in setting expectations, if you didn't know that that was spending for tax relief, then I think you can get misconstrued over what your property tax bill is going to be over time.
Right, so if you
I
use
think that's
if you use
confusing.
the 814, it's the right starting point.
I think that's kind of what we have to go off of and what we have to do as a committee to make that
Right,
happen.
So that's like, that you're right, that's.
In reviewing this budget, I'm not really sure if there's $600,000 to cut, but I think that's kind of the consensus of the committee at this point, is that at minimum what we're looking for. And I think it's on committee members here who would like a lower number to make some proposals to try to make that happen.
Can I mention something?
Yes.
Derek, can you just tell us what would happen if the budget committee put forth a budget that's lower than default? What kind of impact that would have on if it got approved?
If it got approved, what we would first need to do is we would need to look at all our contractual responsibilities. So all of our unionized employees are under contract, and those are wage increases that have been approved at town meeting. Then we would have to, at that point, look at wages and longevity for non-union. If we're below default is artificially low because last year the select board used $1.5 million from unassigned fund balance that does not go back into default, with the exception of the reclamation funds. So last year there was only one cruiser paid out from the operating budget. This year there are 3 proposed to get them back on schedule. And the last time we were in a default, you basically get the department heads in a room for a day or two and make it work as best as possible, and then just, cutting where you have to. So below default, I guess you'd go through the same exercise.
I just wanted to note that it is a significant thing to even propose that as a committee. I'm just saying that out loud because obviously I'm going to fight for my employees and fight for their departments always. I'm fine cutting projects here and there I think we've learned a lesson in seeing that the more that we push stuff off, the more it costs us in the long run. However, we have to do things reasonably. Laying off people is not something that I will support at all. So I just want you guys to think about that if that's something that you're willing to do. I won't go into my personal opinions on that anymore, but I hope that you all consider that when you're thinking about what you're actually proposing and what kind of impact that has on our town, our operations, and our departments, because it is significant.
And I think we also need to think about the legal ramifications of that, because there are contracts, there's union contracts, which means in order to change those and get below any kind of number, we're going to be hiring or adding legal fees to the town budget. Because that's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to do that with a contract standing in place.
The other thing I wanted to mention is when we are looking at this, I hope that you also consider the issue that we've kind of had in CIP with pushing things off. So just think about this as a whole, is that for years we've kind of pushed things down the line in CIP, and Eileen, I'm sure you could speak to this more, but basically we're in a position now where we've put things off and put things off and put things off, and CIP is really starting to compound. So we went from 4 million last year, the year before, and I think it's, and I'm just shooting at what I remember, like 9 million next year. So the more we push off as a whole, whatever it is, moving things back a year, pushing things off, it creates that much more level of complexity in the years, upcoming. Good, bad, or indifferent, I'm just saying that out loud, that I hope if you're considering moving stuff that you go and actually look at what's proposed in CIP for the next 3 years, because there's already a lot of money in there right now.
Right. If you guys look at the totals as you go into 2023 and further, it's huge, and it's
a lot.
There's a huge increase as you go year by year.
Yep, Peter.
So right now, we're talking about 6%, and Kelly, you proposed 7%, right? So are you... the argument, no, I just want to make sure, the argument that you're making, are you making that argument, are you saying we're going to have an issue if we, at 6%? Because, I mean, 6% is not very different from 7.
No, I was saying, I'm interested in seeing if we could get to 6. That's almost $7 million of a decrease, minus the monies that we already took. I'm sorry, 700,000 out of budget. Sorry.
Yeah.
We already took some out. So I said I would be interested to see if we can even get to 7%.
So, but you knowing more of the inner workings, you're meeting with department heads weekly, you're doing all this, you know that we're talking about a significant increase right now, right?
Yeah.
So it's 12% is what we're looking at, right? And we
No,
wanna get it done.
my argument, yes, that's what initially
So
was
12% is
proposed.
what we're initially looking at, and we're talking about potentially getting down to 7. I mean, in your opinion, knowing you have the big bird's eye view picture of all this, and
Maybe.
I think so.
Thank you.
I think you've been very active, so I want to say, like, if you're arguing here, you're saying, hey, maybe one time we have to increase by 10%, 9%, and it's just like, I'm going to have to, as a budget committee member, go out and talk to constituents and be like, I know it's a huge, hard pill to swallow. This is why. This is why this is important this time. I know it's crazy, but we got to push it. Or I'm going to go out there and they're like, what in the world are you talking about? Like, what do you think the argument should be? Should the argument be we have to have it at 10%, whatever?
No, I mean, I don't think 10% you'd have to be pretty confident in whatever is happening. I don't think that that's a place that we should be aiming to be at all. I think the fact that over last year our default is up 4.5% is the first talking point that we need to discuss. What that entails, the fact that, we employ people who have benefits and we have union contracts, all of that stuff puts a significant increase year over year, and will continue to do so no matter what we do. That's just how it works. Specifically in the state of New Hampshire, it adds additional burdens onto it. We have to pay out, how those system works. That's something that's a constant. We will never be able to, I shouldn't say never, but in its current capacity, it's something that we'll never be able to not pay, right? Plus the 53rd week, plus all these other increases, you have to take that into account. That's why our default is so much higher than it was over years past.
Yes.
From that point, you have to look at, that's our general operating That's just to do what we're doing now in some capacity. So anything over that is all of our additional projects, additional purchases, CIP projects, all of that kind of stuff. So really, for me, like I said, the default is the bare minimum
It's
of where we
base.
need to be.
It's bottom low we can go.
And it's high, yeah,
Yeah.
it's high. Like, I mean, I'll be very forthcoming. I pay more in property taxes than I do on my mortgage at this point. So it's not like I'm sitting here talking about this loosely. Like, it impacts all of us differently. But for me, I'm not willing to lay people off or ask our departments to do what they've been doing with the increased amounts with no money to do it. And then what kind of impacts that puts on our projects years out and years out and years out. I get it, it's a lot of money. So we have to ask ourselves, what over our default is important? What do we want to do? What are we willing to push off? What are we willing not to spend money on? I'm open to having all of those conversations. I am not willing to go below our default though, because I will not ever put my name on laying off employees when it's something that is not feasible for the operations of our town. You know, if there was like, yeah, our call volume's down low, great, that's a conversation we can have, but today is not something that we would be able to do and maintain operations. That being said, I'm willing to see if we can we get $600,000 out? Yeah, let's talk about it. You know, like, that's fine, but what are we willing to push off? What are we willing to cut? You know,
Would you be willing to go back to the select board and ask the board to spend some time on saying, hey, you know, we're talking about 3% over here, which is, you know, again, you're going to say it sounds crazy to you. But they're talking about, they're talking crazy, okay? They're drinking something crazy in the well over there. You know, let's do something over here. Let's make some deeper cuts here before the crazy people get it. Like, would you be willing to go and say, hey, let's the five of us sit down and do some work?
Yeah, that's what we did last night. Like the fire apparatus is not something that we can put off anymore because we have to buy a new fire truck. The cost of that increases year over year. The years that we put off putting money into that fund, it's gonna impact us when we actually have to go buy that vehicle. So, you know, that's something that we're wanting to fund because of its significant importance. So that's why we put money towards that. You know, that's why the reclamation is something that the board is very passionate about. When I'm talking about what I'm not willing to do, I'm talking about me personally on this board. As a rep, I can talk about why we've invested money in those projects, knowing that they're important. So yeah, it's definitely something I can ask. You know, we tried to put aside that extra money to offset the 53rd week. You know, like, we're trying to look at it holistically. Thank God we didn't have a 19% benefits increase like we did last year. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many variables in it. It's hard to do. So yeah, I'm down. Like, let's see if we can cut some more stuff out of the budget. I'm interested to hear what people are going to bring to the table for the $1 million that, you know, we're looking at taking out. I'm not against having those conversations, but all I'm saying is that I will fight for our employees all day, every day.
But you would specifically bring it to the select board and say, hey, let's do a little bit of the work here if we can.
But I will say that that's also not, we would defer to our department heads and ask them that question, which I believe is what the budget committee is asking them to do. So I would prefer that we did that first. And we'll continue to look for places. We've appropriated all of our unassigned fund balances in the way that we would do them. So there's an amount of money that we have to keep in our unassigned fund balance as a municipality. So we wouldn't take any more money out of that account. That's, you know, we're appropriating to projects what we can to offset taxes for this upcoming year. So yeah, it would be cuts. I can definitely bring that up, but I would defer first and foremost to the department heads, being that they're the knowledge base for all of that.
Great. Richard, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to point out that our primary fiduciary responsibility on any committee in this town is to the taxpayers. And I guess I'd be comfortable with passing the default. I'd be okay with that, despite the target that I had mentioned before. But something that's not going up by 6 or 7% are wages. And I'm not comfortable pushing people out of town, because every time we see an increase, it's increasing again the next year. It's not like we're passing a 6% increase and then
it's that budget for 10 years and wages have a chance to catch up. It goes up again the next year and wages don't match that increase. So people have to leave. And like Richard said, it's something else that's not going up is Social Security payments and private pensions. So older people are moving out, younger people are moving in, they have kids in the school system, and we see another increase on the school side. So we need to be real with ourselves here. We can't keep just throwing out these increases. I'm glad that we have unions in town with, pre-programmed increases to their wages, but private sector wages aren't matching that. Private pensions aren't matching that. Social Security is not matching that. And we just need to get real here. We can't keep increasing the budget as much as this. I know we have in the past, which is good, that we haven't seen that much of an increase. But the pattern that you usually see with these types of budgets is that you increase them by 4% once, and then you increase them by 3% the next year, and then 6% the year after that, and 7% the year after that, and eventually it just becomes a runaway train, and no one can afford to live in town. And we can't have that, obviously.
I appreciate that. I think all those points are well taken. Derek, did I see you had your hand up? Okay. Yeah, by the
I think the interesting thing would be, Derek, you're going to come back on Thursday to tell us, I think this is what I heard, that you were going to come back and tell us what the default would be if we didn't have the 53rd week and if we didn't have elections and those one-time occurrences. Am I right in that?
I've gotten a couple different directions. I know the 53rd week is something of interest. I know there was a request for what is the wage in those related lines for those contractual obligations that the town has. We can try and break those out because some of those live in default, whereas there are some pay adjustments that are not in default.
So here's where I'm coming at. If we take what our default budget is right now, and we know that the biggest issue in terms is labor, I think the question we need to figure out is if it's that 53rd week. It's significant. I wouldn't be surprised if it is close.
It's $186,000.
That's it. Okay.
That's the number.
So then if you take that out, what is our increase in the default? 275, 287?
It drops down to maybe 3.7.
Okay, so say 3.
3.7.
Okay. So it's, all right, so we're still real close to 4.
No, and that default number also follows the wishes of the voters at town meeting in 2019 that said, put that extra money that you're putting from unassigned fund balance of reclamation and put it towards our roads.
Right.
And that's how that article has been. So there's $325,000 that exists in default as directed by town meeting.
Okay. Really, what I was trying to get to is to see what the real increase is, because the 53rd week is kind of an artificial thing, one-time sort of situation, once every 4 years. So it probably isn't going to make a big difference.
And I think we started working on that today, where we can try and categorize where those increases are.
That's kind of what I was getting to.
It's easier to look at the whole picture and say, okay, so you say $180,000 because of that one more payment in the labor lines because of the 53rd week. So it happens once in a while.
It's once every 4 years.
Maybe the thing to do would be take $180,000 out of that line there in the road work, and then you're within reason.
Well, you're heading where my head was going was if you take that dollar amount and then can we find that much to postpone? That at least gets the default down to what would be a more natural number. Then we still have the issue of where we are with CIP and additional increases.
And the only caution I would put on default is that's a number determined by the governing body based on last year's approved appropriations minus one-times and contractual obligations.
Well, that was going to be another one of my questions was if you actually put a plan to budget below the default, does that change your default permanently then so that the following year you have a lower default? Yeah. which is
Yes,
something.
yes.
wouldn't fall
The
into. Right.
2021 default will
Would
be
drop.
based on
The
the
2020.
2020 approved appropriations
Right.
and basically the statutory definition.
Right, so we would be digging ourselves a bigger hole, a longer, long-term hole is what we would be doing. If we went below the default number.
I appreciate that. Okay.
Trying to find, I think it was, so to that point where you said we appropriated, well, not really, but, said that we were gonna put 120,000.
If that's what it was, okay.
Yes, to
right.
that specifically.
That would
for
help offset that
50/50.
186.
Right.
Okay.
That's what that intention was for
Got
that
it.
money.
If you go through every line, like supply lines and that, and everybody's budget, you're not gonna come up with $180,000.
No, we're not. I mean, the reality of it is whatever this is, to get to $600,000, it's not gonna be pennies. It's gonna be something chunky.
Yep, Peter.
When's the next school board meeting?
Next Monday. Ours was postponed this past Monday, so we are meeting this coming Monday. So 6 days from now.
So, just a realization of, as we're trying to look at this holistically, right, we're trying to just say, at the end of the day, taxpayers are just going to look at how much their bill is, right? They're not even really going to look. They will, but they'll look. I mean,
They're gonna look at the total.
They're going to look at the total that they're paying. I'm not even thinking about the voting booth right now. I'm just thinking about just your bill that's coming in, and that's what we're really just trying to alleviate a little bit right here. Is we're just saying there's going to be some sticker shock, and not just sticker shock. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard on people. So given the argument that we're making at the town side, okay, I don't want to look at just percentages. I want to say, well, the reality is a percent cut at the town level is like a 0.5% cut at the school level, right? Because they're about double. So is there anything that you're willing, as the school board rep, to go back to your school board and say, hey, you know what? Selectwoman Kelly said some of these things we really got to spend money on at the town level this year. We really got to support our town, right? The town is what supports our schools being able to do what they do, vice versa. Are there things that we can do to help this year? This year where we have to make big gains or big increases at the town level, are there things we can do?
So, and my memory's not perfect, but our, what do we call that? Proposed budget is $300,000 over our default budget.
So we can
For
do
the school.
$1,000 for us then. That means we only have to do $300,000 on the town at this point.
I'm just saying
I appreciate that.
That's what our proposed budget is versus our default.
Yeah.
For the school.
I mean, it's kind of apples and oranges at that point. I mean, I get what you're saying, but
Yeah, I
I
get
do
what you're
think we
saying.
have to look at them separately, money-wise, it's different.
It's not like stuff costs twice as much if you buy it in your school.
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
It's not like your budget is twice the size, but it's not like them cutting a stapler costs twice as much as the town side cutting a stapler.
No, I'm saying that if we really
It's
feel
not
like
that
we
easy.
don't,
Yeah.
there are some cuts that we don't want to make at the town level, if we're thinking about taxpayers specifically, if we are thinking about taxpayers, we might have to make the decision that we're going to, even though the increases are on the town side, that's the reality, right? Even though the increases are on the town side, we might decide, we gotta make the cuts at the school side this year.
If I may, when we went through our budgeting process, I know that, Peter, you haven't been able to attend some of these meetings. Our superintendent and administrative body cut $1 million from what our department heads wanted to give us, and we further cut that down. So we took really a long and hard look and tried to present the best conservative budget that we could. Going forward, if we're looking at the budget committee to do all the cutting, we'll be happy to present a $1.3 million over budget going forward. And I don't think that's something that we want to do.
Yeah, I'm really sorry if this sounds aggressive towards you or towards the school. What I'm really getting at is we're not saying that anyone's done a bad job, right? We're saying, like Selectwoman Kelly has said, she's saying we're really trying to do the best we can with, making sure that we're balancing taxpayer burden and the services that that residents, I want to say specifically residents, that residents are looking for, right? That's what we're trying to do. So we might, sometimes we're going to ask a favor of someone else, per se. And that's just all, I'm just making sure that that's clearly put out there.
Well, I didn't say 12%, let's be clear. I know you.
No, like I said, the school, I can say that we try to present the best conservative budget that we could. And if you want to look at it and provide further insight on additional cuts, I'll be happy to have that conversation with you.
What was the percentage increase one more time?
I think it was 2.3% for our proposed budget.
Okay.
And it was $300,000 over the default of what we had. So it wasn't a large margin. But we'll be happy to look at any proposed cuts that we.
And that was with increased enrollment.
That was with increased enrollment. That was with all the other
Right, that
items.
was actually my point. I just don't think there's anywhere we can go. We could, again, you could pass the default budget, but if we're talking about making up the difference on the town side, I just don't think it's there. I don't think we can find it there.
Okay, I think we're having good discussion, but a little bit in circles here, and I think there's some information we've asked for. As far as getting recommendations on cuts from department heads, I'm just wondering if Thursday is a realistic timeline.
Historically, the department heads have been here to answer questions of the budget committee, not cut a budget that was approved by the select board and brought forward.
I think what we would like to do here is at least give department heads an option to come to us with proposals. And if not, then it's on the budget committee to go through line by line and figure that out.
I think it's ultimately just, if we're going to cut it, have an opportunity to point out what you're okay with before we make our own minds up.
I can pass that along to the department heads.
And my question on the timeline of that?
They can be, I'll have to check with them. I did let them know that there was a possibility that you'd be meeting Thursday and have the school here the town here on Thursday night, knowing the school was going to be on next Tuesday. So I have made them aware of that, and they're all here, minus one, so.
The reality of it is we all just have to take a really hard look at it, whether it's school,
And
town.
I think what I'm
department
struggling with
heads.
is if within the almost less than 48 hours here, if any of that work is going to get done. And I'm leaning towards no, and I'm leaning towards we might have a little bit more work to do, and we do have 2 days kind of built in there, and I don't want to 100% use those 2 days in our budget calendar. But it's looking like we might have more work to do, and I'm not sure the point coming here on Thursday just yet.
I kind of agree with you. I think with everything that we've talked about, like I'm saying, I think this is going to have to be a total effort. The school has to go back and look. Maybe it's erasers, it may be a little. We have to look, and I think it would be helpful, even though it's gone through the select board, that all the department heads look. And if listen, we all live in this town and we all pay the taxes. So realistically, we're all kind of in this in both sides of it, paying for it and having to run our budgets. And I agree 100% with Kelly. I don't think we can't go below the default, so we know we're at least locked into that number. And then I think we need to figure out what as a town we can afford and what kind of services do we want to provide and where do we want to pick our shots for the next year and see where we can get it to. If we can get $300,000 out of it, if we can get $600,000 out of it, if we can get $100,000 out of it, at least we need to understand that we've done it and really given it our best shot at what we're going to come up with.
Great. So this is my proposal. Would love to hear input from the committee. On Tuesday, we're going to review school, and I would like the committee to be prepared to come to a consensus at that meeting. Thursday, we've asked for some more information. I think we'll have that in our hands. I think that gives folks more time to review projects, take a double look over your budget, be prepared here, come here with notes and ready to talk about proposals. And would love if we could come to a consensus as a committee, not less than 48 hours from now, but Thursday of next week. Spencer?
So to clarify, we wouldn't be meeting this Thursday?
Correct.
We'd be meeting next Thursday and coming Tuesday?
Yeah, we'd have like a super Thursday of sorts to kind of come to a consensus.
So, Mr. Chair, are you looking to?
I'm looking to not meet 2
After
days from
Thursday.
now, in the Thursday of next week, to be where we come to a consensus.
So are you looking to move the budgets to public hearing at the end or close of business Thursday of next week?
I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to do that. Derek, is there any procedural reason?
There's no procedural reason.
Okay.
There's also no procedural reason for you to not meet the following week. The Select Board has a scheduled meeting on the 16th, which would be that Monday after the Thursday, and you would have that Tuesday and Thursday to fall back on, but I do understand that you've all volunteered your time and given up a significant amount of time already, so you're not locked into that Thursday, but if you want to get it done that Thursday, you absolutely could and move it to public hearing.
Great, that's, okay, that's our goal. Where are we supposed to be on the Tuesday before we get out of here?
The 14th, so that week, the 14th and the
Oh,
19th.
wrong month.
Oh, sorry. Oh, my God. It's
Yeah, it's December.
Yeah, Jesus. All right. The 10th and the 12th, so Tuesday, the 10th is at Town Hall. Thursday, the 12th is at the fire station.
Great. Okay,
Can I say one more thing?
yes.
I would really love for the town portion, if you have something, like if everybody kind of knows their percentage point they want to be at and has their proposed cuts, I'd really love for, like, if you feel strongly it should be at 2%, like, show me your $800,000 you're going to cut out of the budget. And if you want to talk about it, I'm happy to talk about things. I know the department heads are more than happy to talk about things. So consider the cuts that we should be making, but also consider how it will impact us in years past. And I'm not saying that that should stop you from making that choice, but just please consider it. That we are talking about a tax budget this year, or for next year now, but also, collectively, we have to also think about years in the future. So if you want to talk about that long-term stuff, I'm more than happy. Derek, Danielle, all the department heads, but I would love for those of you who think that we need to do some significant cuts to come with, what you want to see, because we're talking, but, let's see what we,
Yeah,
what
it's
we can do.
responsible.
Yeah.
Way to put it. Okay. I think we're good here. I'll entertain a motion. Motion from Spencer.
Motion to adjourn.
Second from Jeff. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same. Okay, thank you guys.